Looking for a way to reconnect and reset? Awaken Pittsburgh offers free guided meditations open to everyone, online and in person, on the first and third Wednesdays, second Saturdays, and third Mondays of each month. Each session includes guided practice, reflection, and space for questions and support. No experience needed. Sign up on Eventbrite and join the community.
Hello friends, my name is Stephanie Romero and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. I am honored to have Dr. Joseph Croskey today on the Ripple Effect podcast. Joseph is an activist for human flourishing and a professor at Penn West University, specializing in leadership and well-being. He brings a unique perspective to his work, having served 6 years in the U.S. Army after graduating from West Point. Dr. Crosky holds a PhD in Administration and Leadership with a research focused on mindfulness. He's also a facilitator for the United Nations Peace on Purpose program, committed to helping people achieve inner peace and create a compassionate outer impact. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Joseph Croskey. So thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I just really excited to deepen our relationship and knowing you and the work you do in the world through this conversation, Joseph.
Thank you, Stephanie. I am so delighted to be with you and can't wait really to learn more about what you do because I'm just excited about what Awaken does for our area, the ripple
Yeah.
effect it's having.
Well, I am excited for you to learn more too. I was just thinking he's going to interview me, which doesn't usually happen on these calls, but that's okay. You ask away.
All right.
Yeah, so I always love to start with folks' story, like their journey. And
Right.
I would love to hear what led you on the path of mindfulness. And I was checking out, your website and things like that, and you have something on there about intentional living. And so, yeah, what has put you on this path?
So many things, you can look back and see things a little more clearly than when they were happening. And if I may, I'll start when I was really, 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 really young. My parents were in a different religion growing up, but they baptized me in the Episcopal Church. And then we went off to Turkey, where I was at 3 or so years old, hearing call to prayer, right, all the time. And I had an accident. Some kids and I were playing, and a little girl, all of us, were throwing pieces of pottery around or glass or something. And I got cut, and I was bleeding profusely from my head. And all I can remember is my mom being really worried as they drove me to the hospital, their little baby. And I was just thinking, it's going to be all right. So somehow I've had this sense of it's going to be all right. That's been with me as long as I can remember. And then the next event that kind of sticks out is at some point, our family moved to Illinois. My dad retired from the military. And I have this sense of having a dream of flying around the world on an elephant, sharing peace with the world. And that's, a real foggy dream from age 9 or 10 or 11 or something. And then in high school, our English teacher, Mr. Bloss, had us reading Siddhartha. And so that probably had an impact. And we had lived in Okinawa, so I had some sense of different kind of awareness from a karate class I went to while I was in Okinawa. That was before Illinois. And then I get to college, and I was pretty involved in my church too, growing up. And into college, I was involved in the church as well. And I had the experience in college of writing a paper, and I found this old book in the stacks of the library. I went to West Point, so it's a military school. All of our teachers, for the most part, 99% of our teachers are military officers. And I found this book that talked about, I'll say Chinese, maybe Oriental. So I was studying Chinese, so I had an interest in Asian thought. And this book talked about the benefits of some, now lost to my memory, some Chinese instrument that helped people in terms of their mind get into a certain state of being so that they could be more effective. And I'll admit I wasn't the best writer, but it was the wrong audience to promote to that mindfulness through this case, music, might be something beneficial for people, right? Not a typical military topic at the time in the early 80s or mid 80s. And so I failed that paper and but I was really lucky because of the way they set up courses then. They would often switch teachers or bring in a guest teacher to grade a different assignment, and I got to write about something creatively. And also loved comic books. And this is a long story, so thanks for bearing with me. I love comic books, and I wrote a little comic book kind of vignette, so to speak, and the teacher liked it. I got an A, so I ended up passing English, which was good. And I stayed more involved with the church and those kinds of things versus meditation after that. And then I get to Desert Storm. I'm working at a unit, a Patriot missile unit in Germany. We go to Desert Storm, and in Desert Storm, we have a soldier who's faced by the same challenges we all are, but he couldn't handle them. We had to send him home because he just couldn't bear being there, right? And that bearing part of it had struck me a couple of different times prior to that point in Desert Storm. Once I was standing out in the rain in the military, and I was just like, oh, this is miserable. And then at some point, I was like, wait, it's just rain. I can deal with this. And that switch in my mind flipped from being miserable to, oh, let's just be curious about the rain falling on my hat and the sounds around me. And that was in some military training. And then in Ranger School, where they do their best to tear you down and stress you out by not feeding you, by not letting you sleep. We had a day where somebody suggested, this is the most miserable day of my life. And he said it in such a way that it was funny. And we all just kind of hung on to that. This day is the most miserable day. And then the next day, this is the most miserable day. And so that refrain helped us to carry through all those times when we were feeling miserable in Ranger School, such that at the end of Desert Storm, now we've sent our soldier home, the war is over. I bump into another guy from West Point in a random spot, and we were joking that Ranger School was easier than war for us. Like that war ended really quickly. We devastated the Saddam's military, and we took care of that pretty fast. So we were lucky we didn't have to deal with a long drawn out thing there. And then fast forward a bunch of years, I'm out of the military. I'm in Alabama. I go to a church retreat, Cursillo, and the power of silence just kind of overtook me one night. I had this vision of seeing Jesus, and I ran like, what's going on here? But I learned to practice a contemplative style of meditation, which I stuck with for a really long time. Now we're up at 2010, and the university where I worked told me I had to get a PhD. And I wasn't sure what I would do because I'd never intended to do a PhD, but they told me I had to. So they asked, what are you going to study? And I found that somebody, Hall, had done some research and found that meditation had helped her students. So I was off and running on this meditation idea again, many years after West Point. And I found that Google was offering a program in mindfulness for their employees called Search Inside Yourself. nice play on Google's work, in terms of search. And so I went to a workshop that higher education was doing some work with mindfulness and other contemplative practices. And so they had a workshop and they told us about Google's work. I went to their workshop and I was like, oh my goodness, these are the practices I would love to be able to share with the world and to share worldwide. And so I got certified in their year-long program to be a teacher for Search Inside Yourself, and then began sharing the work here at the university for my studies. For my dissertation, my wife ran a program that came out of Duke that was geared towards college-age students. And so she ran that program for our students, and they reported such wonderful things, as small as being able to face their math homework with a little more equanimity and tackle the work that they needed to tackle, to a lady with Tourette's being able to now control, if that's the right word, but control her Tourette's better so that it wasn't quite as prominent part of her life. Students reported being more able to talk to somebody else in line where before they might have been shy in the lunch line or somewhere else to speak to someone. This is pre-COVID. And so all those things that the students reported as benefits were also things that I experienced as I was working towards this study. I had gone to a 10-day Vipassana retreat, and I had gone to the Search Inside Yourself thing and the workshops with higher education. And so what my wife commented on was when I started these, I'd have like 40 browser tabs open when I was working on anything, an idea would pop into my mind and I'd forget what I was doing and I'd go try and track that idea down. But with learning mindfulness, I was able to stay focused on the task of writing or doing, that one thing that I needed to do without letting those distractions take over. And so that was one of the main benefits I found, in addition to other benefits, just dealing with the regular stresses of life, if you will. So I got into it in a long about way through the work I had to do for my PhD and remembering, some things from previous and connecting to the future of what I wanted to do. So that's how I got into the mindfulness area.
It's amazing. I love your story. Everyone's story is always amazing to me, but the funny thing that was occurring to me is I don't know if you know, probably you do, but there's a woman now, her name is Amishi Jha, and she focuses on working with the military, right?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is like you were before your time.
Before my time, and not as dedicated as Amishi Jha. She is a fabulous researcher and does some
Yeah.
great work
Yeah.
down at Miami. I wish I could have connected with her more just because of that military.
Yeah.
And even with the Search Inside Yourself work, someone's wife was doing some work with veterans. And, when I learned about John Kabat-Zinn and all the work that MBSR, I guess I went to an MBSR workshop too at Pitt. Um, that work has been so helpful for so many different populations, and
Yeah.
especially the military, with
Yeah.
helping
Yeah.
lead towards post-traumatic growth instead of just the PTSD that people suffer from.
That's right. That's right. And I also find it fascinating that you like your journey. Everyone's journey is always amazing, but you had this peace dream when you were really young, right? And now you're part of this organization, part of like that is housed somehow in the UN called Peace on Purpose. So I would love, just because it's connected with your story, if we could jump to that and tell
Yeah,
us tell us what Peace on Purpose is and how you got hooked into that. And yeah, like I feel like what a premonition, right?
right.
And
And
your journey, like going to West Point, being deployed, like I would never imagine someone ended up where you're at now.
it's really amazing. I will often say I'm the luckiest guy. I'm really blessed. I've been so fortunate in my life. And so that connection started with the Search Inside Yourself work. And with that Search Inside Yourself work, I got to meet the people who initially worked with the United Nations Foundation to help create the program that today is called Peace on Purpose. And they knew that their the United Nations staff face serious stress. They're helping people that are escaping war-torn conflict areas. They're helping women and children in so many different areas. They are doing such good work in the world with not quite enough resources, especially now. And so the UN Foundation came together to create this program called Peace on Purpose. And what's really, really unique about my connection, at least from my perspective with that, is they were doing this training. And I'll have to tell Kelly Boys again, because she sent me an email and said, "Hey, someone dropped out of this training. Would you be interested?" And it was in New York. And I said, sure. And so I dropped everything and drove to Garrison, New York for this weekend training or a few days training. I can't remember now. And what was really funny is that Garrison Institute is right across the river from West Point, like right across. So every day I'd look out, I'd see my old alma mater right across the river. And long, long, long ago, the idea of go east, young man, came into my head. I don't know where I read that or where that came from, but that was probably part of the reason, not part of the reason, but it had something to do with me choosing to go to West Point in the first place. And then to be on the east side of the river, learning this peace on purpose work and looking across at one institution that has a different way of looking at keeping peace and this institution that helps to help people experience inner peace so that that can reverberate out, right? Our foundation is individual change leads to collective transformation. And so that's basically my mission I've taken on because I've had this opportunity to work with Peace on Purpose to help people in our communities experience that inner peace so that those inner peaceful ripples can continue to ripple out into their families and into their communities. And so with Peace on Purpose, I've been very blessed to travel around the world, like literally around the world. I just got back from working in Syria and Lebanon, and this year I've been to Afghanistan and Ethiopia and um, Cabo Verde. And anyway, I've been able to travel to share these practices with people who are really suffering due to the challenge just in their local environment. Syria has been in a war-torn kind of situation for so long, but to be able to go there to Damascus, like the oldest capital city, Paul was on the road to Damascus when he converted to Christianity, and there you can see churches and mosques right next to each other. Same in Lebanon. I was in Beirut, and you can see a mosque and a church, and in the same same block. It's like all the churches you see here, you see a church and a mosque there, and different kinds of denominations. So we are able to share these practices in Lebanon with about 200 and some people, 100 each day. We offered the workshop-ish. And then in Syria, it was smaller numbers, about 30 or 40 each day that we got to work with. But um, they each reported how beneficial the program was, and that just warms your heart. It's so wonderful.
Wow. So that's also so fascinating, and even it's, I don't know, like so inspirational for me to even think that the UN is using practices to support its own staff and their health and well-being. Like that's really exciting to me. I know they have a lot of resources. I've used their website for many things. Um, they have download just for people out there, downloadable PDFs about supporting mental health and well-being, and they almost always include mindfulness as a resource.
Yeah, and with our work, our person who runs Peace on Purpose, Kimberly Baker, is devoted to helping many UN agents. She used to work for the UN, and so she works diligently to get us to the people who really need these practices so that they can
That's
continue to
awesome.
do the good work they do. And so right now, we've been very fortunate. Lululemon has been a sponsor, and so we are encouraging other people to support the UN Foundation in this effort to help humanitarian workers across. And with the closing of USAID and the defunding of all the UN. So it's just really challenging now. but we appreciate our ability to go and do that work because of the grants at no cost to the UN staff. So it's just even more beneficial. It's not as much of a demand on their resources to have these programs for their staff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really good stuff. And it's also feeling like it parallels on a global scale kind of what Awaken Pittsburgh is trying to do on a local level, right? So
Yes.
we're really trying to work with mental health and well-being and sustainability of people in nonprofits here locally, first responders, mental health providers, all of these folks here locally that are trying to do violence interrupters. We started working with a small group of them and, really working with people in communities here to help folks support their mental health and well-being. And I think anyone in the caring professions,
Yes.
right, runs the risk of burnout, compassion fatigue, all of the things because it's so difficult and the need is so great. So Awaken is really taken like this same approach, but we have like the dual we are serving both populations, right? The people that are in the crisis, the people that are on the street that are suffering, the community members, and we're trying to serve the people that support them. Yeah, so I think it's kind of cool that you've taken that out into the global environment.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate that way, but that's what I mean about knowing more about what you do because it's
Yeah.
so vital. And, I think about just if if these students, young children, kids learn about these practices to have some equanimity so they can understand their emotions, accept them, and choose wisely their response to whatever is going on in their environment, that will have such a beneficial effect throughout the rest of their lives. And the workers that you're training with this, not only does it help them at work, but it helps them at home, which then helps everybody in their family. And so, again, the ripple effects of being able to share these practices.
100%. It's reminding me of a story that I heard. So, we were working with high school kids, and these were high school kids that the school had designated as not on track to get graduate, right? Um, for a whole variety of reasons. And I asked them, mostly boys, young men, how do you know when you're angry?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
one of the guys said, I know I'm angry when I'm punching somebody. And I said, definitely shows you that you're angry. What happened before you punched them? Right?
Right.
Well, he did this or that or the other thing, like he did something. And I'm like, great. So between what he did and punching
Uh-huh.
him, like this kid had no space, right? There was no choice. There was no choice. And so I think that that's the thing that is the biggest transformation often that I see
That's
is
right.
the creation of the space for there to be choice.
Hmm. And that choice is our freedom, right? The Viktor
Exactly.
Frankl.
Viktor Frankl.
Yes. Thank you, Viktor Frankl. Your work continues to ripple out.
That's right. That's right. That's it. That's it. So you name that. You name that. And that's really, really what I think one of the biggest gifts is to folks that struggle with difficult emotions,
Hmm.
which is all of us, right?
That is all of us. We all have
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah.
and we can all figure out how this little gap can increase so that we
That's
can
right.
choose a wise response.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah. So I'm very curious how you yourself have kind of worked with or grown into a daily practice or a regular practice. Like what does your practice look like? Because I think for people listening, especially people new to mindfulness, like they're always curious, like what should I be doing? What do other people do? So I always love
Right.
to ask, just like, what does your practice look like, Joseph?
The funny part is that maybe we all have that little negative voice in our head. I'm like, oh, well, my practice isn't what it should be. So, as fortunately, what was neat is I knew this was coming up. I was like, oh. I better start practicing a little more so that I can be a little more balanced and present when I'm talking with Stephanie, right? So,
Positive peer pressure. I'll take responsibility.
yes, so thank you for this little bump in my practice. And I was listening to something else this morning, and the person was talking about habits. And he was describing the idea that, sometimes we get engaged in something and we're real fired up and things are going along great. We keep motivated towards it. And then sometimes there's this little plateau and we might lose some interest. And at that point, in the back of my head, and not quite in the forefront, is the idea that if you're not pursuing enlightenment like your head's on fire and you're trying to find water, then maybe you're not really focused enough. And so that's the continual battle. Like, how can I get my practice up to that level that it should be, quote unquote? And luckily, life can be part of our practice, right? So we get challenges during the day, and oh, let me take a breath and notice what's going on, and let me see how I can respond to this situation. And so my on the cushion practice is in the morning, and regularly I shoot for a nice 20-minute practice. And regularly I fall short of that nice 20-minute practice every morning. But in general, I'll get up, I'll do a sun salutation, I'll practice for 20 minutes, and then I'll go do some exercise. And the sun's coming up later. So I used to say, I'd get out some sunlight in my eyes in the morning, but it was still dark when I finished this morning. Um, so usually a 20-minute practice in the morning. And fortunately, at the Search Inside Yourself training, our teacher suggested a good strategy for starting new habits, and that was commit to what's possible. And what he would suggest as possible is one mindful breath a day. Okay, I can commit to one mindful breath a day. And I know that the Dalai Lama suggests that if I got a busy day, then I should practice for 2 hours before it, but I might not quite get to his level of practice. So I commit to that one mindful breath a day. I shoot for at least 20 minutes of practice in the morning, and I shoot for a little bit of practice in the afternoon or evening. And often for me, what that amounts to is either after work or when I get home, it's sort of a body scan, a 5 minute, you might even call it napitation, right? I'm just gonna relax everything, let everything go, and then be more present for what's happening now in the evening with my family. So, so that's my typical practice. And yes, I'd like to make some improvements, and slowly that will come about.
Yeah, you're with all of us on that. Right? You're with all of
Yeah.
us on that. I hear myself in what you're saying, so I appreciate your honest answer. And I love that you aim for two kind of practices, one in the morning to kind of start and that transitional period between work and home. Like for so many people, they find that time really great to practice just to let go, like what has happened and not be holding it for your whole evening so that you are able to be present to your loved ones in the house and
Yeah.
and be in a different headspace or physical space with all of it. So I'm appreciating that you have kind of bookended your day with practice. So wise and just a great thing for people to think about.
Yeah, it's been helpful for
Yeah.
me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I have more energy and more presence in the evening. It's something that's nice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm curious how, so you have this amazing international thing you're doing through Peace on Purpose, but you actually have a day job
Right.
at Penn West with young college students, right? So I'm
Right.
just curious, what has the impact from your depth of practice and understanding of practice, and it sounds like some of your doctoral work too, like how has that shifted how you show up to students? How does it impact your work at Penn West?
Yeah, what's been fun is the ability to share these practices in different settings. So sometimes a student organization might ask me to share about mindfulness, or this year, our first year seminar, I put together uh, available online, a little mindfulness workshop, so to speak, half hour introduction to mindfulness. So in that way, it slowly ripples out. And I was really happy. Thanks for asking that question, because I'm not really sure how the impact has been, but this year I gave a workshop for a group of educators, and last year I gave a workshop similar, but in Slippery Rock for a group of educators. And I talked about this idea of arete. And the idea of arete is that you bring your values and the highest vision you have of yourself into each moment, right? I like to say, make it a good moment. A moment is all we have. And so if we can try to, at any moment, notice when we're not quite in the zone where we want to be, and we can get to that zone if we think about, oh, how do I want to be in this situation? What would be the best for me and anybody else involved? That leads to this sense of arete, which is kind of being the best you can be moment to moment to moment. And maybe that language, the best you can be, that harkens back to the military commercials I heard as a kid, right? Be all you can be. And so that being all you can be is part of that word arete. And if you can live with arete, or live with your vision and values and goals in mind, then you can experience what the ancient Greeks would have called eudaimonia, or a good soul. We translate somewhat as happiness, or really flourishing, if we go with Martin Seligman's latest book, right? So his latest book is about how we can have that sense of vitality throughout our lifespan. So we have a good long health span in addition to a longer health lifespan. And we're zest filled and hope filled and grateful filled. We're all those things throughout. And so I try to share that with my students in different ways, in different practices that I've borrowed from the different organizations. Search Inside Yourself, we called it a three breath practice. In Heroic, he talks about flipping the switch, which is just really one mindful breath over a period of 15 seconds. But that's something I like to share with my class regularly. I encourage them to stand up at some point in the class, usually about a half hour in, and we'll do some mindful practice throughout the class. And it could be a breathing, or it could be a gratitude journaling, or it could be a journal on 10 things that you're proud of, kind of a cookie jar. What are the attaboys that you can think of to put in your backpack? So it might be a journaling practice or a breathing practice, body scan practice, but I typically try to bring that to my classes. I don't know if they appreciate it as much as I do yet, but I'm sharing it.
Yeah, and sometimes, you were saying you weren't sure about the impact, but sometimes I think we are just there to plant that initial seed, and it may not grow the tree and bear fruit until many years later. Like you don't know.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes,
You
I
don't
like that.
know.
I'm going to remember that. Thank you. I
Yeah.
was there to put the seeds out. Johnny Appleseed is who I will be.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
Right? Because we don't know. And you could be, you were earlier in the conversation naming these experiences like being on retreat for the church and experiencing silence,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
that planted a seed in you,
Right. That's
right? That
right.
ripened years later. And I had that same experience, just, saying I hear so much of myself in your story. When I was a kid growing up, my parents were very Catholic, and we would do retreat. Like we did retreat through our church. And there was a Franciscan renewal center not far from us, and they often held retreat. And I had this as a team, would go with them and
Yeah.
experience retreat. And I remember I was I had to get special permission because I was so young. I was probably 17, 18, and I wanted to go on a retreat by myself, and it was a completely silent week-long Catholic
Yeah.
retreat, like in
Wow.
a monastic situation, right? And
Yeah.
and I just remember just thinking it was the best thing in the world to just be quiet, you know?
Right.
And so those are
Oh,
the seeds, right?
wonderful.
Those are the seeds that get planted in
Yeah.
our lives, that later turn into the practices and the I don't know, the
Yeah.
supports
Our
that we
way of being
need.
in the world. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
And
Oh,
yeah.
nice to know those connections, the connections we didn't know we had. That's one thing.
Exactly. That's why I love these conversations. I love these
So neat.
conversations so much. So
Yeah.
good and rich. Yeah. So for other educators out there that are trying, we don't always see the results, but
Right.
have that faith that you're planting those seeds. Because I believe it's true. I really, really do.
Mm,
And every once in a while, someone will come back or you'll run into somebody and they'll be like, that
right.
thing was so important for me. And you're like, whoa.
Don't remember saying or doing that, but
Exactly.
yes.
If you say so. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Joseph, I'm curious, is there anything you were hoping to talk about on this call that I haven't asked about? Was there anything in your mind that you're like, oh, I want to be sure to say that?
That's a really good question. I am more of a, mm, I don't want to say not preparer, but I'm like, let me see what. So I didn't really think about
Okay, that's all right.
beforehand what might occur here. So,
No worries, no worries. You have mentioned a couple of things that we love to give resources to our
hmm,
listeners, and I
yeah.
usually like Google the things people talk about and put a little list in the in the notes for folks. And you mentioned this idea of arete. How do you spell that? Do you
Uh,
know?
yeah, Arete.
Okay. Where does it come from?
Uh,
Do you know?
Most recently, so
Yeah.
it's an ancient, I'll call it Greek word.
Okay.
So it comes from, we'll call them, Plato and all those guys. But this person recently wrote a book of the same name,
Okay.
and Brian Johnson wrote this book, and
Okay.
he runs a program, and it's heroic.us. So he runs
Okay.
Heroic, and sort of from the lines of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so not the idea of a hero as beater upper of bad guys, but more as has strength to help, someone else. So I like to think, again, church background, of a neighbor, the Good Samaritan sort of idea. And so that's the framework I tend to try to share around this heroic framework. But he talks about it in the way that, if we think about life, we have work and we have love, and then we've got to have energy for both. And so, how can we develop the energy so that we can bring our best to those two areas of life, work and love? And so, his framework is based on that basic idea of trying to bring your best to give service, to the world.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Are there any other favorite mindfulness resources that you love to share that you would want to offer?
Insight Timer is one, and that's a popular one. And there's one, I like, I'm really fortunate again. I get to co-teach with Kelly Boys at Esalen, and she does yoga nidra practice. And so her channel on YouTube and her work um, in an app, although this one is a paid app, so not as accessible, called Waking Up. But there are so many beautiful resources. I love to read books by Eknath Esaran, or I guess really listen to him reading his books on Audible. And his books have been a treasure trove. And certainly John Kabat-Zinn, wherever you go, there you are, or works about mindfulness. And so I often will get summaries, and that's what Heroic provides access to. If I don't always have time to read those books I want to read, they provide summaries just like Blinkist or Short Form or some other, organization that provides summaries of books. So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, everyone feels so pressed for time. So that's a
Yeah.
great tip. I know I am a avid reader and I always have about 4 books going on at any one given time, so there's stacks of books all around my house. You can
Right.
you can see some of them there behind me.
Yes.
But they're my whole
Good.
yeah, the problem is my husband is also an avid reader, so
Oh
between the
boy.
two of us,
Oh boy.
so many books, so many books.
Too many books.
Yeah, so many books. Yeah. If we had to be guilty of overbuying anything, it's probably books.
I can agree, or
Yeah.
I identify with that. I hear that in myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
My poor wife would love me to find a new place to put all these books.
Yeah. And imagine if you were both doing it. That's my house.
Right. Not good.
Lots of shelves, lots of shelves. Well, Joseph, this has been so much fun. I have really, really enjoyed connecting with you in this way and appreciate your zest for life and yeah, you labeled it as a zest-filled life, and it comes across in your the way you're talking about your work in the world and everything you're doing. So I'm feeling a lot of appreciation, and yeah, it's contagious. You have imparted your joy to me in this conversation, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's bouncing back at me because I really appreciated this conversation. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome.